Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to what I hopefully think is going to be a very short reading wrap up, and hopefully you actually end up seeing this week because my laptop today decided to start doing very weird things. It started flickering and it stopped now, but I'm kind of worried it's going to be a thing and it's going to have to go in for repair at some point, and I'm not looking forward to it because I have a MacBook and those are very expensive. So please pray to the laptop gods that will not happen. As I said, this is going to be a very short reading wrap up for the month of September, so without further ado, let's get on with the video. So the first book that I read in September was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. So this is kind of like a cozy romance book that takes place in a small town. It's following two characters, one is named Jeannie and the other is named Logan. Now Jeannie is actually gifted her aunt's cafe in this very small town, so she basically decides to leave her corporate world job in the city because things have started to stress her out and she feels like she just needs a new start in life. And in this little town she ends up meeting this guy named Logan, who is our other character, and he is basically a local farmer who basically supplies local businesses with his produce, and obviously things ensue from there. They kind of meet in a cutesy meet cute way. Now this one for me, it was okay. It was nothing special. It was kind of one of those books that you read but it's easily forgettable. So ask me what this was about, like maybe in a couple of months, maybe in December, and I will have forgotten basically the whole plot. It's not very memorable. It's just a very nice cozy cutesy romance, and it's a really good palate cleanser for when you just need something quick and easy to read. The one thing that this book did that I absolutely have found that I hate in romance, because romance is still a relatively new genre to me, is I found that there was an instant infatuation between the two characters. There wasn't really any build up to their romance. They met, instant attraction, and that was that. Maybe that's a me thing, I don't know, but like it doesn't do it for me in the real world, so it doesn't do it for me in books. I like a slow steady build up. I like to see these characters have interactions and maybe even hate each other. They don't even have to hate each other. Like, I love seeing friends to lovers. Like, I just want a build up, and this book didn't do that. I also found that there was some conflict between the characters, and I almost found that it was a little bit too back and forth all the time. It started to get a little bit repetitive, and I honestly was just like, I'm kind of done at this point. Like, can these two just like sort out their issues and just like deal with them? And a little gripe that I have, and I think it's because of the author's name, and I don't know if that's intentional. Like, I don't know whether that's a pseudonym because it seems a little bit too good to be true. Laurie Gilmore. I've literally just started watching Gilmore Girls within the past like 3 months. I think I'm on like season 2, season 3 now. Yeah, and you know, the whole time I was reading this book, it felt like Gilmore Girls, and for that reason it felt a little bit too try-hard. Like, it felt as if this author loves Gilmore Girls and just wanted to make kind of like a Gilmore Girls fan fiction. The guy Logan felt a little bit like Luke, and it really kind of put me off because when I read stuff I want stuff to be a little bit more unique, and I know stories are just like recycled over and over and over again, especially romance. Like, what really is different about every single romance book you read? But it just felt a little bit too Gilmore Girls-y, and even though I love Gilmore Girls, I'm really into it, I don't necessarily want to read a regurgitated fan fiction about it. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars. It was okay, but I wouldn't say run to the shops and buy it. So the second book that I read in September was actually one of my anticipated reads for the year, and that is Wisteria by Adeline Grace. This is the third and final book in the Belladonna trilogy, which is a young adult trilogy that is kind of like a gothic paranormal romance series. Initially, the series starts by following a character named Signa, who is basically adopted by family member to family member because she has kind of like this curse following her where anyone that decides to take her in ends up dying, and she can actually see Death himself. And then she is basically passed to this last family named the Hawthorns, and there she discovers that there is kind of like some wicked things going on within the family. There is a family member down with a strange illness that they are slowly dying from, and the mistress of the house actually died months prior, or a year prior to Signet arriving, and there is obviously kind of like a mystery plot that goes along with that, but then there's also a big paranormal romance element. And then as the next two books go on, they end up eventually following a different character. The second book is kind of like a dual point of view between two characters, and then the last book follows a different character. So that's all I want to say, because I feel like it'll spoil certain parts if I tell you exactly what this last book is about. But let's just say the kind of love interest in this book is called what should I call him? What is his name? His name is Aris. So that's all I'm gonna say. But I was highly anticipating this book because in the last book there was a lot of banter between Aris and this other character, and genuinely it was giving full-on enemies to lovers, and it was proper enemies as well. It wasn't just like silly little spiteful banter, like it was genuinely like these two characters hated each other's guts, and I was living for it. And this whole trilogy takes place in like a very Regency type setting, so think Bridgerton, and honestly I love the second book. However, I found the last book entertaining, but it was a slight letdown, and I'll tell you why. So first of all, I'll say I did love the couple. I knew I was going to love the couple. I loved them in the last book, and I knew I was going to love them in this book, and that's no different. I also did really enjoy the mystery element. That's something that I've enjoyed throughout the whole trilogy so far, because sometimes the twists and turns do take me by surprise, which is sometimes really hard to do now. However, what I will say is this book felt very rushed, and I can't really say why, but there were certain elements of the book that just didn't feel like they were explained fully. Like, it just felt as if there was this character that came into the book and you knew who they were, but they came out of nowhere and then no explanation was given, and that was that. And then they left and it was done, and it felt so rushed. And there were also a lot of plot holes as well, and I'm not a one to pick up on plot holes. Like, I'm a very face value kind of entertainment reader. I read, I enjoy it, and I put it down, and I might be a tiny bit critical, but I'm not really overly thinking about how well something is written or, you know, whatever else. I like what I like, and that's that. But the plot holes in this one were honestly jumping out at me. There were also some magical elements that didn't necessarily make sense in this book, and I can't remember what they were. I think it was just because of the fact that there were things that were happening that didn't quite get explained that well, and so I found them really confusing, or it was almost like they should have been explained earlier on in the series and they weren't. And then you were just expected to be like, oh, okay, so that's how that works. Fine, okay, whatever. We'll just ignore that that's a thing now. I don't know what it was. I feel like this book was the weakest link, and it almost feels as if as well this needs another book, and it almost feels like the author might be going that way, which is kind of annoying because I almost wish that this had dragged on just a little bit more so that it could be finessed a little bit, because the previous two books were fantastic. I loved them. This one, not so much. I was really let down by it. I wasn't as disappointed by this one as I was when I read House of Flame and Shadows, but this almost felt disappointing in a similar way, just because I was really looking forward to it. I expected great things because I'd loved the previous two books, and it didn't really deliver. So overall, I really enjoyed it, but it had its issues, so I ended up giving this one 3 stars, unfortunately, but I definitely couldn't rate it any higher than that. The third book that I read in September was The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. This is the third and hopefully the last book in the Housemaid series. Initially, I think this was only meant to be a duology. In my personal opinion, and I'm just going to put it out there now, I think this should have stayed a standalone. I don't think we needed any more books after The Housemaid. They've just seemed a little bit too unnecessary in my opinion. So in this one we are following the same character again named Millie, but this time, which this really threw me off, we are visiting her much later in her life. I think in this book she is, I think, late 30s or 40s in this book. She has kids now, that's the thing. And she's, spoiler alert, she's not a housemaid anymore. Now the overall plot of this book is basically she moves into a new neighbourhood with her family, and strange things start happening, as they usually do around Millie. First thing that I will say is everyone has 9 lives, but Millie and her companions have 50 million. The second one, okay, the second book was enjoyable, right? Like, it was okay, but unnecessary. And the third book was just silly. The third book was just so silly. I will admit the plot twist did take me by surprise, which is one of the reasons why I really do like reading Freida McFadden books. If you're looking for thrillers but you're not looking for anything too intense and you just want something easy to read and you're not sure whether thrillers are for you, I would absolutely push you towards Freida McFadden. Her books are so quick to read and the plot twists are actually pretty decent, but this trilogy just wasn't it. The first book was great, but like the second 2 books just no. This one in particular was kind of hard to read just because the first half was so slow. I was really bored. It felt like you was watching a housewife just do her daily stuff. And like, yeah, she was a little bit worried about her husband or whatever, but you're just watching her do her daily thing as she moves into this neighbourhood, and it was all just a little bit boring, and I was like, when is this going to get exciting? Because like, I want to put this down right now. And the other thing that I'll say about this one is I know Freida McFadden really like goes hard with her plot twist, but the one thing I'll say about this, I thought the twist was really like dumb. I'm sorry, in what universe? In what universe? I know that we don't necessarily read for things to add up like they would in real life, but this one just felt so unbelievable. And I'm gonna say this without spoiling it, but there's this whole thing to do with like a room, like a toy room, and I'm not saying that Freida McFadden should have gone a little bit darker with her plot twist on that one, but it felt really stupid. It was almost, I don't know, it was almost like you just had to add the dots up yourself as to what happened years beforehand, and that's all well and good, but I don't know, it just felt silly. Like, it felt really silly, and I didn't love it, and I'm really hoping that this is it, because when I read the acknowledgements at the back, one of the things that she said was, oh, this wouldn't have happened without you, you asked for a third book and, you know, you got it. Who was asking for a third book? Ma'am, I didn't even want a second one. Like, I just wanted the first one. It should have stopped at the first one. The first one was great. It didn't need any more after that. It should have just been done and dusted. So yeah, I don't know who was asking for a third book, but I hoped you enjoyed it more than I did. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars, just mainly because it was easy to read and it was still entertaining, and I still got to the end and I was like, oh, I'm glad I read that. But I just don't think that this series is it anymore. So then the 4th and final book that I read in September was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This was my 2nd ever Emily Henry book, and I was really hoping that she would redeem herself, because the only other book that I've read, and I got slightly confused with this one, was Beach Read, which is also called Book Lovers. I think it's called Book Lovers over here, but Beach Read in the US, and I've been calling it Beach Read, thinking, oh, I haven't read that. I have. Why would they do that? It's so annoying. And also, I feel like Beach Read isn't the right title. I do think that it should have been called Book Lovers in the US as well, because when I was going by the title Beach Read, I was like, this isn't very beachy. Like, this is not what I expected from Beach Read. So as I said, I was hoping Emily Henry would redeem herself, and she did. So this book basically follows our 2 main characters named Poppy and Alex, and Poppy is currently living in New York working this job where basically she gets to travel for her job because she's working for like a travel magazine, and she has this best friend named Alex who she ended up meeting with in college, and ever since they met they decided to start going on these yearly vacations together. However, one vacation ended up going very wrong for some reason, and for 2 years they basically haven't spoken. I'm gonna say it's 2 years, maybe it's a year. I feel, I can't remember. It's quite a while. They don't speak for quite a while. Anyway, after that happens, Poppy ends up deciding to reconcile with Alex. She basically gives him this idea that they should go on another vacation together and basically try again and try and rekindle their friendship that they had. And obviously this is like a big friends to lovers situation, and I loved every single second of this. I officially might be an Emily Henry stan. Like, she, after this book, she might go up there with, oh, what is her name? Abby Jimenez. I devoured this book. I read it in a day. I read it in a day because I could not put it down. I was so obsessed. I loved it. These are the kind of romances that I love, right? Is the ones where, you know, they don't necessarily get spicy. It's really just all about the plot and the story being told, and you might have like the tiniest sprinkle of like a steamy scene somewhere, but that's not what the focus is. The focus is on the story, on the love being built up throughout the book. Like, these are the romances that I die for. I absolutely loved the way that this story was told through flashbacks. So essentially you have kind of like current day Poppy, and then you have chapters where basically you'll be reading about their previous holidays, and it will tell you how many holidays ago it was. So it will say like summer 2 years ago or whatever it was, and I really loved the way that it did that, because it really felt as if, even though in the current day you were still kind of learning about Alex and also Poppy, with the flashbacks it was just adding to that. And it was just done so well, and I feel like it just pulled off the friends to lovers thing so effortlessly. I also have to say, the characters are flawed, but I love them for that. I love flawed characters. I think if it's done really well, the characters just end up feeling really real. And in some ways, I could kind of relate to Poppy. I love these characters. I loved everything about them. Like, oh, it was so good. I also have to say, the love confession in this book, impeccable. The love confession is something that I will think about till my dying day. Like, it was, honestly, it's like, I want to kick my feet in the air and giggle. Like, I love this so much, and it makes me so excited for the adaptation, which is the only reason that I picked this up, because I saw the casting and I don't want to see a trailer or something, you know, whenever this film or whatever is going to come out, and then kind of have those actors in my head, because I do want to see the adaptation now, but I want to have my own characters in my head just before anything else releases. The only negative thing that I will say about this book is I did feel really bad for Poppy and Alex's partners. There were quite a few other side relationships throughout the book, obviously, as this whole thing is building up. And I just felt terrible for them. Like, I didn't necessarily love Alex's partner at one point. Then again, I didn't really like Poppy's either, but like, I did feel bad for them because clearly there was something going on with Poppy and Alex and they just didn't want to admit it. But overall, this was my 1 5-star for the month, and I'm so happy about it because now I'm so excited to move on and try to read some more Emily Henry, because now I'm like, okay, I get it. I get the hype. I'm excited to read more. Like, maybe they're going to be a bit hit or miss, but I am excited to see how many more that I'm really going to enjoy. So those were all of the books that I read in September. If you've read any of the books that I did, then leave a comment below and tell me what you thought of them. If not, let me know what your best or worst book of September was. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content from me, then don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. So bye guys.